Prime Minister Modi's two-day Russia trip for the 22nd India-Russia summit in Moscow begins on Monday. Stand by for the biggest coverage from Ground Zero. The largest team of reporters, the biggest coverage and the fastest updates. Republic reports live from Moscow.
जब ऊंचे पदों पे बैठे लोग कह देते हैं हिंदू हिंसक हैं, अगर हिंदू हिंसक होता तो एक हिंदू सनातनी बेटी को इस सुरक्षा घेरे में अपने ही देश में अपनी आजादी गंवा के रहने की नौबत नहीं आती।
Nupur Sharma sends a clear message to Rahul Gandhi on his Hindus are violent remark. Speaks for the first time since being expelled from the BJP.
तुम करो तो वाह वाह, मैं सत्य भी कह दूं तो सर तन से जुदा, ये मेरे देश में नहीं चलेगा। मेरा देश भारतीय संविधान से चलेगा, किसी मजहबी कानून या शरिया से नहीं।
Nupur Sharma, in her comment that's gone totally viral, says the country will run by Constitution of India, not by religious laws.
जिस तरीके से ये घटना घटी है, सरकार को गंभीर होना चाहिए और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को बेहतर यही है कि ये मामला सीबीआई को इनको रेफर करना चाहिए।
After the brutal murder of BSP Tamil Nadu Chief K. Armstrong, Party Supremo Mayawati in Chennai demands CBI probe in the case. Very good afternoon, friends. In what is being viewed as a significant visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in Moscow tomorrow and day after, that's July 8 and 9, at the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin to hold the 22nd India-Russia annual summit. This will be Prime Minister's first Russia visit since the Russia-Ukraine war that began in February 2022. From joint dialogue on contemporary regional and global issues to boosting bilateral ties, a lot is on the cards. In fact, this is the first time since 2015 that the Prime Minister is landing in Moscow. He did visit Russia in 2019, but that was to Vladivostok to participate in the East Asia Economic Dialogue that Russia holds. There were other engagements that have happened between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. In all, they have met 16 times since Prime Minister took charge at the helm of the country in 2014. And of course, numerous phone conversations that the two have had. The last meeting that they had was in September 2022 in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, on the sidelines of the SCO summit. And we have Sucharita Kokureti, who has landed in Moscow and would be bringing us live minute-to-minute coverage of Prime Minister's visit as the Prime Minister lands later in the afternoon tomorrow. Sucharita, very good afternoon from here in India. And while we would be discussing a lot of geopolitics, geoeconomics, geostrategy, and import of this visit for India's diplomacy over the next 2 days, please tell us, how's the mood like there on the ground in Moscow?
Well, Abhishek, you said good afternoon, a very, very good afternoon from Moscow and from the Red Square, the iconic Red Square that we have seen, that has been one of the most prominent landmarks of Moscow, of Russia. And I'm there at the Red Square, which is adjacent to the Kremlin, the seat of power for the Russian government. And it is going to be a very, very important visit. We've made it very clear that the Prime Minister in his third term has chosen Russia for his first bilateral visit, which really puts down the importance that he is given to the India-Russia ties. We know that this came as a surprise to many Western countries after the sanctions that had been put on Russia. But the Prime Minister very, very clear, and the Indian government very clear, that it wants to tread the path of very clearly strategic autonomy that India has been following, and it will do so in the future as well. Now, the Prime Minister is going to be here. But before that, let me just show around this Red Square to our viewers, because we know that the Prime Minister is going to be landing here tomorrow afternoon. But before that, I'm at this iconic Red Square, which has been the center for so many parades, for so many executions, and it's the word red. People would literally see the buildings here are red in color, but that's not really what it means. Red in Old Russian means beautiful. So it is one of the most beautiful squares, not just in Moscow, but the whole of Russia. And the Russians take pride in this beautiful place. But this is just to show our viewers, just to get them a glimpse of the place we are in. And Sanjeet, if you could just turn around and show them the Saint Basil's Basilica right adjacent to the Kremlin. If you could just show them the beautiful, the colorful building there. Very, very iconic and one of the most prominent landmarks of Moscow. I'm here in Moscow. Right.
Sucharita, since it's been a few hours since you landed there, and Russia, remember, is in a war with Ukraine. While we would, of course, discuss every aspect of Prime Minister's visit, first tell us your first impressions of having landed in Moscow at the airport, then driving down to the downtown and reaching Red Square, buying those SIM cards. How has been the experience being in Moscow for these hours that you have been? Because Russia is in a state of war. Does it get reflected in the kind of interactions that you have had till now in the first few hours?
Now, a very, very interesting question, Abhishek, that you've asked. The moment we landed in Russia, the very first, or at the onset, the thing that comes to mind is that this country is at war with Ukraine. And right from the invasion that started, there have been the number of tourists that were going to Russia, the number had gone down. There are people who are skeptical about going to Moscow. But the moment we came here, we tried to speak to a few locals. See, language is a barrier here in Russia. And we would like to tell our viewers, not many people speak English. It's very hard to find people who would speak in English. But we try to converse with them. We try to speak to them. Many of them don't really want to comment, or they really do not know the war scenario here. They're in the heart of Moscow. They really do not know what's happening with their troops fighting with Ukraine. And they feel that whatever is going on in their country is to their best interest. I tried to speak, my cameraman tried to speak to a few Russians here, the ones who could converse in English. And what is very interesting is that if you come to the Red Square, it's like any other very, very crowded European square. If you could just look around. Now, people here, mostly Russians, because from the airport as well, I could see that not many foreign tourists are coming to Russia, and that obviously very, very clear from the fact that this country is in a state of war with Ukraine. But maybe the entire scenario is changing, because the country believes and the people here believe that if there was an invasion and if there was a state of war, it was for the good. That is what I tried to the sense that I got from people when I started speaking to them in here in Moscow. The moment I landed, and I had a similar curiosity, Abhishek. When you asked me that question, that was my question as well when I landed in Moscow. That are people really feeling the heat of a war going on? They know that the country is in a state of war, but that doesn't really seem to be the case here. I also want to tell you, Russians here are very particular about the fact that their common squares, their public places, not too much TV coverage should happen. So if you can see, there are a lot of people, and especially a lot of police officers around, moving around, who are telling us to move away from the Red Square because it's very close to the Kremlin. So I would keep walking as I speak to you, because they're asking us not to be shooting here and not to be... Yeah, so I'll keep walking as I speak to you, Abhishek. And I'm telling my viewers why I'm doing that. Yes, why I'm doing that, because there are a lot of police officers who are here. They obviously know it's right next to the Kremlin that we are standing. So they make sure that a lot of TV coverage is not happening. And I also got a sense that the people here in Russia, they don't want to speak much. Language is a barrier, but they don't really comment on that state of war. I've spoken to at least 10 people ever since I've landed. It's not been a very, it's not been a long while. I tried to speak to people and I wanted to ask them about war, but I believe that there is a sense that the invasion or the state of war is to the interest of the Russian people, and that is what they believe in. And if you come to Moscow, Abhishek, you would not feel that this country is in a state of war.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm looking at your full frame, Sucharita, and people are really relaxed. They are sort of moving around at ease, and it does not look like from these pictures, Sucharita, that this is a nation or a society sieged of war and under any kind of stress, which is good if a society can really handle that kind of war and still be relaxed. But okay, so even if the cops, by the way, come to you and take you away, don't let the cameraman go, because we'll need the camera for the live coverage all through the next 2 days. What's really planned as the Prime Minister lands tomorrow? So Charita, if you have been able to gather, how's the visit going to pan out?
Right, Abhishek. So what is very interesting is that from what the ministry has told us, there are about close to 14,000 Indians in Russia. Now we've been again asked to move, so I'll look into that.
You can. In fact, I just saw some people waving at you. If you think you can speak to them, please do.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to do that. It's just that it's the fact that we are foreigners. They understand we are Indians. Some of them are very friendly. They come to us and they speak to us. But language is a barrier. So I would try to connect to a few people, because it would be really nice during the live coverage. But at the same time, as you said, the Prime Minister is going to be here and he's going to be addressing the Indian community in Russia. Now that is again going to be on the 9th. It's going to be a very big audience that the Indian community is going to be gathering at the Carlton, where the Prime Minister is going to be staying, and he's going to be speaking to the Indian audience, to the Indians there in Russia. Now that is going to be an important event. Now as he arrives tomorrow, it's going to be a state dinner with the Russian President Putin, and the next day, after he speaks to the Indian diaspora here, he's also going to be having a bilateral, a one-on-one with the Russian President on the 9th, that is. So that is going to be his program here, and he's going to be moving on the 9th to Austria for his visit there. But as for now, that there are, as you asked for people who are moving around, if I could just try and speak to people, I really don't know if they would be able to put in a word, but it would be great, because we're celebrating Russia and India ties.
So Charita, what we're going to do is, I have a couple of sound bites. You take that time to see if you can speak to somebody. Even if you're not able to, I'll come back to you to understand how the day pans out from here. But let's listen into a couple of sound bites that have come in from Moscow, from Moscovites.
हम तो बिल्कुल बहुत सालों से इंतजार कर रहे हैं कि माननीय हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी रसिया में आए। हम बहुत ज़्यादा, ये भारत और रसिया के बीच में और ज़्यादा मधुरता लाएगा वो यहाँ पे आएंगे, तो हमें बहुत ज़्यादा खुशी है कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं, तो बहुत ज़्यादा हम उनका वेट कर रहे हैं।
And we heard that the Prime Minister is visiting, so काफ़ी अच्छा लग रहा है. It's going to be, better for our relations, and yeah, it's really good.
अभी हमको पता चला है कि कल प्रधानमंत्री जी हमारे मिस्टर मोदी जी यहाँ पर आ रहे हैं. बहुत एक्साइट फील हो रहा है और बहुत अच्छी बात होगी इंडिया और रशिया के रिलेशनशिप बढ़ाने के लिए. और काफ़ी टाइम के बाद यहाँ पर उनका आना हुआ है. पहले कई सालों पहले वो आए थे, कोविड के पहले आए हुए थे.
Okay, so Charita, coming back to you, this is not a state visit. So in a way, the whole paraphernalia that goes with a state visit in terms of all the celebratory mood that you see might not be there, but still you might be getting some pictures of how the preparation is for Prime Minister's visit that begins tomorrow.
Oh, yes, Abhishek, as I said, the Carlton is the hotel that the Prime Minister is going to be staying in, and that for now is being prepared because we just passed that hotel while coming to the Red Square and getting you a live from Moscow, from the Red Square here. But as you said, preparations are full swing. We spoke to the Indian ambassador here in Russia. He's going to be live with Republic TV in a few minutes from now, and he told us very clearly that this visit of the Prime Minister to Russia is going to be another leap forward in the India-Russia ties. So they're really looking at this visit as a very, very strategic visit to Russia. He also told us that the Indian diaspora address is going to be a very, very important one, because remember, the Foreign Secretary's press briefing also spoke about a lot of Indians who got stuck here in Russia, and the Prime Minister may may raise that issue with the Russian President Putin while he's going to be here in Russia. So that is going to be an important thing, and that is up during this meeting between the Russian President and the Prime Minister Modi. What we are showing you right now is the iconic Red Square. We are also talking about the India-Russia strategic alliance, the strategic ties that have not just that have taken a giant leap in the last 10 years that Narendra Modi has been in power. Narendra Modi and Putin camaraderie we've seen in the last 10 years, but this friendship goes back decades before Narendra Modi came into power as well. So when we speak about the Putin-Modi ties, we do remember that Russia and India have been strategic partners right from the time there was the Bangladesh separation happening, and how the Americans had supported Pakistan and Russia came to our help. So going back, it's very, very important to see that entire perspective from the historical point of view, because Russia has stood by us, and that is precisely why today when Narendra Modi comes here, he comes here at a time when there have been sanctions by the European nations, sanctions by America against the Russian state. Now, Narendra Modi coming here for this bilateral visit, very clearly giving out a statement to the Western world that we are going to be treading a path of strategic autonomy very clearly, and also the fact that the United States, China, looking out at this visit, what pans out between Modi and Putin is going to be very, very important, though we know that these kind of bilateral visits, the program is sketched out much before the state heads arrive and they meet, but it's going to be a very, very important and a strategic meeting also from the global perspective, because a country that has been completely isolated by the global world is going to be at the center of this entire global spectrum, because India is very clearly reaching out to Russia at a time when it has been sanctioned by the Western world. So now when I speak about Narendra Modi's visit to Russia, very, very important, and I have a few Russians coming in, people from, I don't really know if they could be visitors, but are you from Russia?
No.
Yeah, no. Do you want to speak? Do you speak English?
No.
You just know? Okay. So there is a lot of laughter
someone behind you actually filming you.
As I said, the language is a barrier. It's difficult.
There's an old lady behind you filming you, Sucharita.
That is sweet. I hope, and I just hope they are the right people, because there is a lot of, as they said, a lot of security people filming as well. So I'm just hoping, and she's walked away. But we'll try to speak to a lot of people. We'll try to speak to a few more people here in Russia, in Moscow. But as I said, when you tell them you're from India, they get a smile on their face. So I'm sure the strategic ties that I was speaking about, and they've been decade long, is not just okay,
Sucharita.
Putin and Modi. It's
Sucharita.
much before that, and Narendra Modi has only taken it forward. Yeah.
I mean, of course, we'll talk about the Prime Minister and his reaching Moscow tomorrow, and of course the engagements. Have you, by the way, been given any indication from our mission there in Moscow about how's the engagement going to pan out? Like Prime Minister lands late afternoon tomorrow. I believe there is a state dinner, a formal dinner being hosted by President Putin for Prime Minister. And then what happens next?
So, Abhishek, I couldn't clearly get you, I couldn't hear you, but as you spoke about the state dinner, yes, President Putin is going to be hosting the Prime Minister tomorrow. There is going to be a private meeting between the two state heads, is what we've been told. We've been told that it is going to be a dinner hosted by President Putin for Narendra Modi, and it's going to be a private meeting between the two state heads. After that, there is going to be obviously the bilateral meeting that is being kept for the 9th, which is going to be right after the address to the Indian diaspora. So that is going to be on the 9th, but for tomorrow, there is going to be a state dinner which is hosted by President Putin. And very importantly, we know that we've seen and we've we've heard the kind of conversations that go on between people about the Modi-Putin camaraderie, as I said. Now, we have to wait because this is going to be Narendra Modi's visit to Moscow. He'd been to Vladivostok, but that was a few years back, and he's going to be here in Russia meeting Putin. He's met Putin on the sidelines of many international meetings, international events, but this is going to be a meeting in Russia. What makes it even more special is that he's coming all the way to Russia and he's not gone to the SCO meeting. Now, that is a big snub for China, and he not being there, the External Affairs Minister representing India at the SCO, which obviously sees a clear dominance by China. The Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister not going there and going to Russia to meet Putin. Now, we also know that the China-Russia ties have been at an all-time high. So now when the Indian Prime Minister goes here to meet Putin, comes here to meet Putin, it is also an India-Russia tie that we are seeing, that is like a boom in the India-Russia ties. Now, for the American perspective, we've got to be seeing a global perspective to this meeting and not just the Indian perspective. And when we see the American perspective to it, very clearly wooing India to somewhere downsize the dominance of China here. But then you see an India-Russia relationship panning out. There is a China-Russia relationship panning out. So there is also a sense of panic among the Chinese with this visit. So there are multiple perspectives to the Putin-Modi meeting, and they're going to all unfold here at Moscow as we report live for Republic TV.